We need to grow Michigan. We need to grow our population. I talked about how we've been growing, but if you look at it over the last 6 years, we've added about 50,000 people over 6 years. I want to set a real goal. We can grow faster than that. We can do better.
And that is Governor Rick Snyder during his 7th State of the State address this week. Welcome to MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. While Snyder covered the positives, he's getting some criticism for what he didn't include in his speech. We will go over some of the biggest points for you coming up. Plus, Betsy DeVos withstood grilling from the Senate this week as Donald Trump's choice for Education Secretary. We'll take a look at what she said. And the inauguration for President-elect Donald Trump is Friday. The expectations, the tone, and the big march the next day. It is all coming up for you. But we are starting with Governor Snyder's State of the State address. So let's bring in Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Guys, it's really great to see you. And one of the things I noticed today is that actually Nolan is wearing crazy socks.
He is.
You know, I know it's not. It is a high point of my week sometimes when Stephen has crazy socks on. But Nolan, you're never crazy.
I was feeling frisky.
So is this a one and done? Is this or can we expect more
He's
socks?
emulating me in the new year.
I have enough.
Now that's nuts.
I have enough trouble finding the match to my black socks without trying to figure that out.
All right, so My Week viewers, savor the wide shots of these socks today because you might not ever see them again. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the State of the State address. I was a little underwhelmed by it, but I'm going to first off get your impressions of it before we then hear some specifics that he was talking about. So Nolan, go ahead and give me a start. Thoughts?
I was almost relieved to be overwhelmed or underwhelmed by it because
why were you relieved
I
to
think
be underwhelmed?
It's almost become a requirement for governors to stand up there and launch all of these pie in the sky new initiatives or repackaged initiatives with fancy new names during their State of the State addresses. I think this speech reflected the reality that this is a second-term governor in the second half of his second term. He's not going to get a lot of new big initiatives done. Better to focus on finishing up, fine-tuning, expanding the programs he's already put in place over the years, which is quite a few. Get that right before you leave, rather than sort of propose a whole lot of new things that the legislature may or may not buy.
I think that there's a difference, though, Nolan, and maybe, Stephen, you can comment a little bit on this. There's a difference between throwing out a bunch of new initiatives, which I understand would not maybe be the best thing for him to do, or then maybe saying, we're going to take we're looking at infrastructure, more education, and expand on those a lot more than maybe the 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes that we've heard on some of that
he didn't give
stuff.
anything a full airing during this speech. He didn't talk much about any of the important things that he even says are important. I was really disappointed that he didn't take the infrastructure question more seriously. He keeps talking about a study and, well, we'll have a commission. Well, we had a commission that says we're $4 billion short every year. So where do you want to get that money?
All right, so hang on. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what he had to say about infrastructure. All right, Jerry, go ahead, roll it.
We're at risk in every corner of Michigan for aging infrastructure, and we cannot take this for granted. Michigan residents deserve safe, reliable, sustainable infrastructure. That's why I created the 21st Century Infrastructure Commission last year. The commission did tremendous work. They looked for best practices not just in our country, but around the world. They concluded that we need to invest more. We need to literally invest billions of dollars of new investment over the next several decades. ...
Where are we going to get that money?
Well,
that's a lot of money.
But I think that's the point. I mean, this governor uses this speech as more of a survey speech. We've done this, we're going to do this. It's a lot of different things in it. He doesn't go into much depth on either one of them. Any one of them. He saves that for the budget address that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And I think that is where he's more comfortable talking about what he's going to do and details. We wrote in an editorial today that we would have liked to heard him talk more about two things, education and infrastructure. And if he's going to make additional impact over the next 2 years, those are the areas he needs to make impact because, You know, the state has improved under his watch in a lot of different areas, but not under education. Our education performance is as bad today as
And
it
we
was
will
then.
get to education.
underinvested.
We will get to education and what he talked about. I have a couple of things, but I want to stay with infrastructure for just one quick second before we also jump to Flint. So
I was gonna say Flint.
So
This is
he's addressing the legislature, the ones that are going to either help him find the money to do this or not. And so
He doesn't
Stephen,
say anything about it.
what was your thought in looking at the the audience that he was talking to? Do you think that they're going to be able to help him? And where in terms
No,
of
I mean, they're
funding
not
and stuff?
inclined to help him. In fact, the first thing they did in the House this year was introduce a bill that would eliminate the income tax over time, which, look, I'm all for innovation and interesting ideas, but putting that out there without saying where you're going to replace that revenue when we're $4 billion short for infrastructure, when we are still underinvesting in our schools. I mean, we're just now catching back up to where we started in terms of school investment when Governor Rick Snyder took office. I mean, we need more money. And, maybe you can get some of that through shifts and savings, but $4 billion a year is going to have to be new taxes. And everyone's going to have to get their minds around that if we're actually not going to become a backwater.
And again, I think that's where the budget address will be telling. He's never used this speech in that matter. On education, I think the bigger problem is not investment, not money. It's the fact that we don't have a cohesive strategy. We can't agree.
Well, we have a
on
new
where-
strategy every year, right?
And we are going to get there. I told you we're going to get to education.
Okay, sorry.
I actually have a plan here.
You're going a little slow.
No, I'm not going slow because we're talking about infrastructure, money, and now we're talking about Flint, something that he
Roll it
spent
out.
about 2 minutes on. Go ahead, take a look.
Last year, the people of Flint suffered an unacceptable crisis. I made a commitment to the people of Flint to fix it. We took immediate action. In the following days and months, we've worked tirelessly to make Flint's water safe to drink again and improve the entire city of Flint. We're making progress, but our work is not done yet.
So they're all making fun of me here about how I've got to let it flow organically. But I'm telling you people, if I let you people just go without any direction,
great
we'd
show.
have a whole lot of trouble on our hands. All right, so we talked a little bit about Flint. He talked about the investment, but man, it was 2 minutes.
It was 2 minutes and it was 30 minutes into the speech.
Yes.
Which I thought was a really interesting placement for the most significant failure that this governor has had during his time. And
and
last
the fact
year,
that people still cannot drink water
people
out
still
of their
can't
tap
turn the
without a
taps on.
filter.
Last year, I thought he did a really admirable job, finally, of standing up and really taking responsibility. He emoted, I thought, appropriately about how sorry he was. I thought this year you had to come back and say, look, I'm trying, we're not there, and here's what I'm going to do to get us there. There was none of that.
I agree with that, but I think he could have also talked more about the progress. The water is getting better, and it's a lot better
talked
than
about
it
that.
was
He did say the
a year
water
He
was
did talk
getting
about
better.
that.
There's been a good deal of progress in securing federal funds and some state funds, but he did seem to breeze right through it. He had things he could have bragged about on Flint. You didn't expect him to go up there again and start, the whole mea culpa stuff. I mean, he did that last year.
No, but I
How
think
about
he
talk
could.
about
I
how to
think he
fix
could
it?
have said, I understand the people who are watching me tonight in Flint. I understand that you still have a filter on your faucet.
Right.
I understand that only 600 pipes out of what
11,000
12,000
yeah.
are not replaced yet. But we're with you, but maybe that's just
Here's
me
what
trying
we're
to
going to
project
do.
a
I
personality
think-
onto the governor that's not his style.
Well, and I think he feels as if he talks about Flint a lot throughout the year and has throughout this year, and maybe he felt like.
Yeah, well, people there got to live with it every day. So.
Well, and again, I think you've got to wait to see what he's going to put in the budget for Flint this
All right,
year.
we're now going to talk about education.
Now
Are you
we're
happy
done.
now? Are you happy now, Nolan, or are you done? Are you done? Let's go ahead and take a look at what the governor had to say about education in the whole in the state of Michigan.
We need to give our kids the education that gives them the skills and judgment they need to achieve quality careers, to start families, and to give back to their communities. So I created the Education Commission this last year to take up those issues, and I'm looking forward to their recommendations. But we have made some key accomplishments this last year. One thing in particular I'm excited about was the work on pre-3 reading, about enhancing the investment in those young people, because you learn to read through 3rd grade. After 3rd grade, you read to learn. And we need to do more, and we're going to get up to being the best in the nation by working these standards.
Okay, so he did talk on the whole about the commission that he had started. But again, in the details of when will they be done with some kind of study, then
Well, they're
what kind of
done.
action do you want to take on this and the cohesive approach to education in Michigan, Nolan?
They're basically done. That report's coming out next month, and I'm really worried about the report itself. I mean, it's from what I'm hearing, the early stuff I'm hearing about this, it is not going to be the comprehensive education reform strategy. It was put together primarily by the education establishment in the state. Very few business people on it, very few parents, if any, on it. Limited charter school representation, and it sounds to me like it's going to be a whole lot about protecting the status quo. I think one area this governor could make a difference in the next 2 years is being the champion for education reform, because that's what's missing in Michigan. Other states that have moved ahead have had either a governor or someone who served as the champion, and I think franchising this off to a commission was not such a good idea.
I would have liked to have
That's
heard
how
a
he's
little.
done
I would have
everything.
liked to have heard a little bit more, though, about the state reform office, which is now underneath the governor, and they're going to be coming out with a list of schools
Right.
that could possibly be shut down. And there was no mention of standardized testing.
Right.
So I think that a lot was left unsaid there as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a governor who likes commissions a lot. I mean, if you think, we should probably, before he leaves office, go back and count how many commissions he set up to do things, and then count how many of those things have actually resulted in, positive change or action. I mean, that's where we are with this education question. It's not time to study; it is time to do something. And I agree.
But I won't
We've got to
criticize.
settle
I won't
on
criticize him for trying to bring in people that have the expertise.
Yeah,
so
no,
in
he
terms
should
of bringing
have those
commissions
people
together,
there.
I can't criticize that.
He should have those people there, but we know there's no one sitting around wondering what we're not doing right in Michigan. There's no one sitting around wondering whether we need to spend more money. I mean, we're spinning our wheels, sort of sitting around talking about these things and fighting over governance, fighting over unions, fighting over all kinds of stuff that doesn't really get to the core of what we're doing in the classrooms, and he's allowed that to go on.
It's not ideas, it's leadership. And if he's going to put together a commission on education, given how far we're falling behind there, he should have been the chair of that commission. He should have been hearing it directly. It should have been representative. But this state needs an education champion. We've got this whole bifurcated education leadership structure where the state board and the state superintendent are separate from the government. And so they don't act in tandem. They're often at odds. And we are not going to move ahead until we fix that governance structure.
I know, but what does that say for the hundreds of thousands of kids who are in school? I mean,
Waiting.
and parents who are sitting and waiting.
And let's not pretend it's just kids in urban schools and places
No,
like
that's
that.
what I'm saying. I'm saying this
It's
is a
people-
statewide issue.
It's people in schools all over this state, suburban, rural. We are not doing what other places are doing, and we have to.
All right, final thoughts on how this takes us forward. I know you said that you're looking forward to a budget presentation when we actually get to see some of the numbers for some of these programs. But Stephen, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think the real question is what mood this legislature is in. I mean, the early showing is pretty awful in terms of their focus on what the problems really are and what the solutions might look like. They're playing to ideology, which seems to have worked at the ballot box for them for a long time, but it's not produced better outcomes for this state. I mean, we've slipped way behind in a lot of areas that are basics, and they will touch all kinds of other things: economic activity and growth, population growth, something that we want to get back to in the state. It's really on them to respond to some of the things that he might ask them to do in this budget.
Nolan.
And here's the reality: whether Republicans are in charge in Lansing or Democrats are in charge in Lansing, we are going to have an ineffective legislature, an overly political, an overly ideological legislature as long as term limits remain in their current form.
And as long as we let them draw the lines for
We
their own
are
district.
not developing the caliber of lawmaker and legislative leaders that we did in the past since term limits kicked in. They've been a disaster. They're destroying the state, and they simply don't work with this whole goal of making progress in Michigan.